In this video, we are going to talk about the negative thoughts that many of us deal with in our daily lives. We'll explore why our minds create these negative stories in the first place, and look at some practical ways to manage and respond to them more effectively. Many people notice that their minds often create negative stories about situations, other people, or the future. A simple event can quickly turn into a chain of worries. What if something goes wrong? What if they meant something negative? What if I fail? These mental narratives can feel very real, even when they are based on very little information. Understanding why the mind does this can help us respond to it with more awareness and less stress. One important reason the mind creates negative stories is related to survival. The human brain evolved to detect potential danger. Thousands of years ago, being alert to threats helped humans survive in unpredictable environments. Because of this, the brain developed what psychologists often call a negativity bias. This means the mind naturally pays more attention to possible problems than to neutral or positive situations. From the brain's perspective, imagining potential risks is a way to prepare for danger. However, in modern life, this survival mechanism often works in situations where there is no real threat. Instead of protecting us from physical danger, the mind begins to create imagined problems about work, relationships, social interactions, or the future. A small uncertainty can easily grow into a complex story about failure, rejection, or loss. Another reason the mind creates negative stories is uncertainty. The brain dislikes not knowing what will happen next. When information is incomplete, the mind tries to fill in the gaps. Unfortunately, it often fills those gaps with worst-case scenarios. This is not because something bad will actually happen, but because the mind is trying to predict outcomes in order to feel more prepared. Past experiences also play a major role. Our minds constantly use memories to interpret present situations. If someone has experienced disappointment, criticism, or rejection in the past, the brain may automatically expect similar outcomes in the future. These expectations can unconsciously shape the stories we create about current events. For example, a delayed message from a friend might trigger thoughts such as, maybe they are upset with me, or maybe I said something wrong. In reality, the delay may have nothing to do with the relationship, but the mind quickly connects the situation to past emotional experiences. Overthinking can intensify this process. When the mind repeatedly analyzes the same situation, it often builds increasingly complex narratives. Instead of observing what actually happened, the mind begins to imagine multiple interpretations, many of which are negative. The more attention these stories receive, the more convincing they start to feel. Another factor is the brain's desire for control. Humans naturally want to feel that they understand and can predict their environment. Creating stories, even negative ones, can create the illusion of control. The mind feels safer when it believes it has already imagined possible outcomes. However, becoming aware of this mental habit is the first step toward changing our relationship with it. Thoughts are not always accurate reflections of reality. They are interpretations created by the mind. When we recognize that the mind is simply generating stories, we can learn to observe those thoughts instead of immediately believing them. Practices such as journaling, mindfulness, and meditation can be especially helpful in this process. Journaling. Journaling can be a powerful tool for dealing with negative mental stories because it helps bring unconscious thoughts into conscious awareness. Many of the stories the mind creates feel overwhelming simply because they remain unexamined. They move quickly in the background, creating tension, anxiety, and confusion. Writing these thoughts down slows them down. It gives them a visible form and allows us to look at them more clearly. Journaling also creates emotional release. Instead of carrying stress internally, writing gives the mind a place to express itself. This can reduce mental pressure and make difficult emotions feel more manageable. In many cases, journaling does not immediately solve the problem, but it helps organize the inner experience so that it feels less chaotic. Another important benefit of journaling is that it encourages reflection. Once thoughts are written down, it becomes easier to ask questions such as, is this thought based on evidence? Am I assuming the worst? Or, is there another explanation for this situation? In this way, Journaling is not only a method of expression, but also a method of gaining perspective. Over time, regular journaling can help people develop a more honest and balanced relationship with their thoughts. Rather than automatically believing every mental story, they learn to observe, examine, and understand what is happening inside their minds. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment with awareness and without judgment. It can be especially helpful when the mind begins creating negative stories because it teaches us to notice thoughts without becoming immediately absorbed in them. Another strength of mindfulness is that it helps us develop a non-judgmental attitude toward our inner experience. Instead of fighting thoughts or criticizing ourselves for having them, we learn to witness them with patience and curiosity. This gentle awareness often reduces the power that negative thoughts have over us. With practice, mindfulness can change our relationship with thinking itself. The goal is not to stop thoughts completely, but to become less controlled by them. In this way, mindfulness helps create inner stability, clarity, and a greater sense of peace. Meditation. Meditation is a structured practice that helps train attention and deepen awareness. It can be very effective in working with negative mental stories because it teaches the mind to slow down and become less reactive. In daily life, thoughts often appear so quickly and continuously that we do not notice how strongly they influence our emotions. Meditation allows us to sit quietly and observe this process more directly. As we focus on something simple, such as the breath, we begin to notice how often the mind wanders into worries, assumptions, and imagined scenarios. This awareness is valuable because it reveals how active and habitual the storytelling mind can be. One of the main benefits of meditation is that it strengthens the ability to return. Each time the mind drifts into a negative story and we gently bring it back to the breath or the present moment, we are practicing mental redirection. Over time, this makes it easier to step out of overthinking in everyday life as well. Another important aspect of meditation is that it helps us experience thoughts as temporary events rather than permanent truths. In meditation, we see thoughts arise, remain for a moment, and then pass away. This experience can be deeply reassuring. It reminds us that not every thought needs to be followed, analyzed, or believed. With regular practice, meditation can cultivate greater emotional balance, patience, and self-awareness. It does not erase negative thinking completely, but it changes how we relate to it. Instead of being pulled into every fearful narrative, we learn to remain more centered, grounded, and aware. The mind will likely always create stories. That is part of how it works. But with awareness and practice, we can choose which stories we give our attention to. And in doing so, we create space for clearer thinking, greater emotional balance, and a more peaceful relationship with our own minds. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. If you'd like to see more videos in this area, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.